From the Don and Lorena Meyer studio for a special in-depth update on Nebraska's agriculture, this is Nebraska Nightly.
Good afternoon and welcome to Nebraska Nightly. I'm Jordan Salvatore.
And I'm Hayden Hudson. We're coming to you with a special edition of Nebraska Nightly where we take a deep dive into the status of agriculture in the state of Nebraska.
It's a challenging time for agriculture here in Nebraska. The USDA says cattle populations are down. However, prices are rising according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and local plants are shutting down. In addition, industry experts say immigration policies are affecting the shortage in the agriculture workforce. And later, we will learn about how technology is making an impact in the ag industry.
Since the implementation of tariffs from the Trump administration, farms have been hurting, especially those in rural communities. Reporter Austin Ockengay spoke to a Waverly farmer who has felt the impacts firsthand.
On the edge of town in Waverly stands a cattle farm on a hill. This is Tom and Paula's farm, and after 40 years of ownership and marriage, Paula says the recent stress is wearing her thin.
You are on edge, but it's not new. I mean, we've ridden this up and down for a lot of years. You just keep putting one foot forward and waking up in the morning and seeing what is out there.
In fact, Paula says her farm has taken a big hit since the Trump administration's tariffs.
The tariffs are not helping us whatsoever. They never have. That adds to our input costs too, and you lose the trade partnerships. And once you start losing those trade partnerships, you're not going to gain it back. We're dealing with 3-4 years of below average prices and crops that you really have to look at the big picture because it is our life. And we have to make sure that we're doing the very best we can with what we've got.
Paula feels like this is an issue that goes unnoticed due to a lack of agriculture education. That's why Paula has made it her mission to keep her community informed through her farm.
Bills are made and laws are passed. People don't necessarily know the full impact of what it'll have on agriculture. And I am concerned that we'll have lawmakers in there that lose that component. Right now, there's very, very few rural legislators. And I think it's important for people like us to continue talking to their legislators and saying, okay, this is how it's going to affect, maybe not a direct path, but go around the circle. That's where it's going to get to.
At the end of the day, Paula says her love for the livestock and the trust she has in her faith is what keeps her going.
I think just having a strong faith and knowing that God put us here for a reason. This little corner of the world is he's got a plan for us, and we make it every year somehow, and we know it's all due, to the good Lord keeping His hand in it. But I think honestly, it's just the faith in knowing where we're supposed to be, and this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Despite all the uncertainty with agriculture and the future in Nebraska, the work never stops. In fact, Paula and Tom welcomed a new baby calf today on the farm, and it just shows that this is what we're here for and this is what we're seeing. Austin Ockengay, Nebraska Nightly.
The struggles that Paula faces are not individual to her. Major events in recent years have affected the day-to-day life of many Nebraskan farmers.
When we continue, we'll dive deeper into these events and take a look into the economic state of Nebraska.
Nebraska calls itself the beef state. However, the beef industry is facing new challenges in 2026. The closure of the Tyson beef plant in Lexington at the beginning of the year is sending shockwaves through Nebraska's cattle industry.
30% of Lexington's population worked at the plant. So this not only affects former employees, but also the community. One of the workers affected by the closure is former supervisor Cheryl Alvarez.
It's devastating because, I've been there 35 years and it's your life. It was my life.
Producers will now have to haul cattle further to other plants, increasing costs and cutting into profits. The facility employed over 3,000 workers and processed nearly 5,000 cattle every day. While new processing facilities are being built, they will not fully replace Lexington's capacity.
But I think that's the hopes for the community, that somebody else is going to come in, whether it be in a year or 2 years. The sooner the better, but who knows, because nobody's really said anything.
The Lexington plant accounted for roughly 4.8% of the U.S.'s daily beef slaughter. This loss is estimated to be a $3.3 billion economic loss for the state. For Nebraska's beef industry, this marks a long-term shift.
The cattle industry is a crucial element to Nebraska's economic stability. However, the USDA says the cattle population is declining.
Let's hear from Austin Ockengay for more on what the impact is looking like.
That's right, guys. Looking at this graph, we can see that there has been a 20% decrease in population numbers since 2020. According to the USDA, in 2020, Nebraska had about 1.9 million cattle, and in just 6 years, that population fell to be just over 1.5 million. Earlier this spring, the beef industry took an even bigger hit. One of the largest fires in Nebraska history burned more than 900,000 acres of land, affecting an estimated 35,000 cattle for the summer grazing season. With the land in the sandhills now dust, the high winds are dangerous for the calves. Thanks to the donations of hay from farmers across and outside the state, cattle and their farmers may make it through the grazing season. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Austin. Although the fires have hurt many farmers and their cattle, another impact on the decreasing cattle population is due to the New World screwworm.
Blake Millisitz is here to tell us more about why this worm is causing a decline in Nebraska's cattle inventory.
The New World screwworm is affecting the feeder cattle that we receive from Mexico. We're closed because of the screwworm in May of 2025. Because of less cattle, prices of beef have risen 13% between 2024 and 2025, and steak prices rose 16% according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Thank you, Blake. When we come back,
we'll hear from a local immigration nonprofit.
welcome back. In addition to a decline in cattle, Nebraska's ag industry is seeing a dwindling number of workers.
Old age, financial struggles, and immigration uncertainty are all reasons less people are working on farms.
The Nebraska Department of Labor released a workforce report in 2025. Agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting had the most workers aged 65 and older at about 13%. President of the Nebraska Farmers Union, John Hansen, says retiring farmers are having a hard time finding young people willing to work for long hours and little pay.
They're used to working 40 hours a week and getting a dependable paycheck and having a fairly decent standard of living. And all of a sudden, here they are, they're working twice those hours, and they may or may not have enough money at the end of the month to pay all their bills.
Recent immigration policies are also impacting Nebraska's workforce. The Farm Services Agency former executive director John Burge says Nebraska needs an adequate labor exchange program to keep the economy stable.
One that I have talked to, regardless of where you're at on the political spectrum, recognizes a need for some bipartisan immigration reform that allows for transition from people that overstayed their visa or came here as children or whatever to be able to find a pathway to citizenship.
Many organizations are helping immigrant communities in Nebraska. Hope Esperanza, a North Platte-based nonprofit, is one of them. They provide employment services to help immigrants get jobs. Executive Director of Hope Esperanza, Tina Maria Fernandez, says she tries to bridge the gap between English and non-English speakers.
A lot of interpretation for attorneys as well. If, the attorney doesn't speak and they need to relay something to their client, or clients that are unrepresented that just don't know if they have a pathway, we can give them names and then help them contact someone.
Even with tools to bridge the gap, many immigrants are still struggling to get jobs. Ice raids in large plants like Glen Valley Foods in Omaha leave a larger impact than many think.
I also will say a lot of our Cuban refugees and other refugees, many refugees that lost their status. I mean, there was over 500,000 individuals that lost their status last April, and they're fighting, their pathway to get work authorization back.
While the workforce shortage continues to challenge Nebraska farmers, Hansen and Burge say passing a new farm bill is a step in the right direction, pointing towards policies like crop insurance and conservation programs as ways to offer farmers some relief.
We'll look at future farmers, new technology, and the financials behind it when we continue.
Welcome back to this special edition of Nebraska Nightly.
While the agriculture community in Nebraska still faces many struggles, some advancements in technology hope to streamline processes.
Reporter Harrison Skiles talked to a future farmer about his thoughts on where technology and agriculture is headed.
The state of technology in agriculture has been changing for hundreds of years. From the yoke and plow to today's agriculture equipment, the improvement of technology is clear. Because technology is ever-changing, farmers must stay on their toes and continuously stay up to date with the technology.
I'm 22 years old, and it took me 5-6 years just to figure out John Deere Auto Track and how to run certain programs within, mapping fields and soil testing, reading soil data. It's very intricate.
Young farmers like Johnson, who work with new technology, expect it to continue to grow and get more complicated.
I think AI in agriculture, especially in the next 10-15 years, it's going to be a big part, especially as tractors get bigger.
Farming now looks much different than it did just 50 years ago, but the new technology raises some concerns.
I think too much tech could be a problem, but not enough tech could also be a problem.
Although technology in agriculture is a great boost, there are always risks as the industry adjusts.
In the studio, reporter Marceline Alaudi sat down with a farm credit officer.
Moss is a markets officer at Farm Credit Services of America, here to talk about his expertise on farming markets across the state.
Today I'm here with David Moss. So at Farm Credit Services of America, you guys focus on lending money to farmers and ranchers. When a farmer comes in for a loan and they have a lot of expensive software and AI instead of just an old tractor, how do you guys kind of decide what's that worth, and how do you guys decide how much money to give them?
Operations that we work with, like you said, maybe have an older line of equipment. Some of them are using the newest line that has all this technology components as well. So really just trying to understand what their operation is, their overall business plan, and how that kind of fits.
Moss is a markets officer at Farm Credit Services of America, here to talk about his expertise on farming markets. Moss is a markets officer at Farm Credit Services of America, here to talk about his expertise on farming markets across the state.
Today I'm here with David Moss. So at Farm Credit Services of America, you guys focus on lending money to farmers and ranchers. When a farmer comes in for a loan and they have a lot of expensive software and AI instead of just an old tractor, how do you guys kind of decide what's that worth, and how do you guys decide how much money to give them?
Operations that we work with, like you said, maybe have an older line of equipment. Some of them are using the newest line that has all this technology components as well. So really just trying to understand what their operation is, their overall business plan, and how that kind of fits into that cash flow of that operation. So, we can kind of work with our appraisal teams and other resources that are out there to get valuations of that equipment, and then kind of use that to put a loan package together for the producers.
How do you guys make sure that young or small farmers aren't kind of left out because these equipments are so expensive? How do you guys work with them?
We work with anyone from a young and beginning small producer up to the largest agriculture producers in the country, and we do really want to make sure that we understand the unique needs of all those different demographics of producers. So really, again, just trying to know what does make sense in their operation, and then just really understanding kind of the cost of production and how that equipment cost and that total investment is going to have a different impact on their bottom line than it may be of other producers of different sizes.
And you said you were coming from a farmer's background yourself. Do you guys kind of use these equipment on your farms? And if so, have you seen, in your experience, is it harder to get these equipment pieces as well?
Yeah, I work with my dad and uncle on our family farm in southeast Nebraska here, and we have things on our planters. Planting season's right around the corner here, so automatic row shutoffs, GPS, a variety of technology that's put in the planters and other applications that we use throughout the year. Another interesting one that we've been able to take advantage of and have had customers as well is the use of drone technology for spraying of fungicide products on our corn and soybeans late summer, and I've worked with a variety of customers who have also been looking to make this investment.
Do you think these expensive tools makes younger people want to stay on the farm?
I think it does kind of, if you're going to go back to the farm and you have hopefully a family operation that's maybe able to help you get started, is what many producers are looking at, because it is a huge investment to get started, and seeing that some of that technology would make it a little bit more exciting to go back to the farm. It seems like sometimes the older generation might not always be as willing to look into the technology to see how those pieces of equipment work, get the proper licensing and things of that nature. So I've seen many young, ambitious producers that are excited to get back to the farm and put some of these technology to work.
And beyond tractors, where do you see generative AI having the most impact on the business side of things?
There's a lot of different ways to try to be more efficient with that. One kind of thing that I think is unique more from like the finance and business side of it, outside of equipment, even like your grain marketing, that's something that farmers face challenges, when to sell their commodities, and being able to kind of work with a grain marketer, but maybe having a plan that says, when we hit these different price levels, that's when I want to sell, and some of those more, repetitive actions that AI could be kind of help you hold yourself accountable to that grain marketing plan.
Thank you so much for your time here today. We really appreciate your perspective on the farming and business side of things. Back to Hayden and Jordan at the desk.
Thank you, Marceline. Technology has become a huge part of agriculture today, but there is a lot more technologically that we might not understand. We took a look into the technical side of things and spoke with industry expert Jeremy Verana, who works with systems that run on large amounts of tech every day.
When I first started, computers were just starting to be introduced on tractors, which were using the Chrysler Collision Detection System, which was the CCD. Then they went to the CAN system, to ISOBUS, and now we're running, Ethernet capabilities on our equipment.
The technological advancements have immensely helped farmers know when their equipment is due for a checkup, and technicians are able to easily identify what may be the issue.
Truthfully, in my opinion, we're in technical revolution 2.0. So, since the original industrial revolution, things haven't changed this fast. It's amazing the amount of data that we're pulling in.
While future challenges are expected, you might assume machinery would be the main issue, but Verana says at least half of the problems actually come from the electrical side.
We hope you enjoyed our Nebraska Nightly special on the status of agriculture in Nebraska.
Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Nebraska Nightly.
Have a great night.
Nebraska Nightly is a production of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's College of Journalism and Mass Communications.